Welcome to the CoStar News Hotels podcast. I'm Natalie Harms, reporter for CoStar News, and today my guest on the show is Brandon Ehrhardt, Vice President of Marketing for Travel Partners and Advertisers at Expedia Group. Brandon, I know you're familiar with our other podcast, Tell Me More, but thanks for joining us over on the CoStar News Hotels show.
Happy to be here. Love travel, love sports, and love to talk about them together. And I think we've got an exciting topic today.
We do. Listeners of the show and readers on CoStar News Hotels know that we have had a lot of World Cup coverage so far. I have to shout out my colleague, Trevor Simpson, who has really led that coverage for our team. But today, Brandon, you and I are going to take this episode to zoom in on some new data that just came out from Expedia Group and its partner Predict HQ. So before we really dive in, I want to talk with you about kind of the sports travel trend in general. Fan driven travel. Expedia's put out some information about that as a trend. So, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think largely experiences in general have become more popular, especially, in the past 3 to 4 years. And sports is certainly one avenue that has grown and grown quickly. I think it's because fans are not just booking for the soccer match itself or for the event itself. They're designing an entire trip around that. And that's been a significant change. We've seen, people will use the event as a jumping off point. And so this tournament is unlocking a wave of high intent travel as fans, they show they're willing not just to go to the city where they may have planned to go to initially, but they want to go further, they want to stay longer, and they want to spend more to really have a full rounded experience when it comes to traveling for this World Cup. It's not just about the soccer match, it's really about how can I turn this into a great experience for the folks I'm traveling with and make it really like kind of my summer trip to remember.
Yeah, I mean, what types of sports are really growing that travel trend? I mean, and it's global. It's not just into the U.S., out of the U.S., right?
Right, and it's interesting because I think the easy answer is most of them,
Hmm.
but I think what we've seen, obviously, this summer with soccer or football, depending on where you're coming from, is going to be the big driver of traffic. In North America, we see the NFL and American football be also a driver of that traffic. As we think about where there's value for hoteliers, I think it's easy to get sucked into like the mega events and like these large tournaments. And when in reality, we've seen regional sports grow quite a bit, whether it's like, sumo wrestling in Japan, whether it's banana ball, here in the US. There's a lot of different sports where people are going to, have fun for 3 or 4 hours, become part of the community, and that becomes the anchor for the trip, but not the sole purpose of the trip. So I think we'll continue to see sports of all kinds, including smaller, more niche sports, grow. We're just a couple weeks out from the world's single largest day sporting event in the world, which is the Indianapolis 500. That's 300,000 people. So it doesn't matter whether it's racing or it's soccer or it's football or it's something regionally or niche. Like there's just a ton of opportunity for hoteliers to attract these fans to their properties.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big F1 fan, so a part of that sport is the traveling all around the world, so, you know,
Exactly.
I have to travel if I wanna see a race, and where you go is such a part of the experience too, especially with
Absolutely.
Formula 1. Yeah.
Highly recommend you head to Singapore and take in the night race if you can. I went last year and it was absolutely incredible.
I heard it was a hot one, but
It was a
a
little bit
good one.
warm, a little
Yeah,
toasty.
a little toasty. Well, okay, so let's talk about this recent data and the World Cup specifically. Obviously, the biggest takeaway is there's an expected $8.1 billion travel dollars spend up for grabs for a lot of people in the hospitality industry, a lot of organizations. So, can you quantify that a little bit and really kind of set the scene for that impact?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'll talk about like just this data itself. So, and how we get it. So, we
Mhm.
partnered with Predict HQ, which is an event intelligence platform. And we use that in combination kind of with our first party data to get a real good sense of how we believe, the revenue and the opportunity is going to trend. So, for this specific data, what we found is that we believe it's going to be around $8.1 billion. And that's a $750 million increase year over year. that is split across accommodations, ground transportation, and F&B. So let's dial in on the hotelier side. The piece of that pie is about $4.8 billion. Now, here's what's great. That number is up 86% from last year, where it was about 2.6 billion bucks. And what this is going to do is create an opportunity for a lot of hoteliers who may not think of themselves as like the ground zero for World Cup lodging accommodations to win additional traffic because we see people coming, staying for longer, making it part of the destination, willing to like explore outside of that city. And then you have people who are just looking for value, right? If I'm going to go spend $2,000 on a World Cup ticket, that's going to change how much money I have available to spend on a hotel. And so we see that creating a lot of more opportunity for hoteliers outside just the immediate area around the stadium, which I think is an awesome opportunity for this industry and for the people who can act fast, not just see it, but really see the data, understand the demand trends and act on it to, stimulate that traffic and, attract it to your property.
Mhm. Yeah, I think something else that's really interesting is, we obviously have host cities across the continent, and some are kind of poised to win bigger than others, right? Is that kind of what the report showed? That some markets are really trending significantly up, right?
Yeah, and I think there's always gonna be, like, a year-over-year component to this,
Mhm.
and so if you imagine you're stimulating traffic for a city that maybe didn't have a lot of demand last summer, or it was just, kind of a seasonal it's not a seasonal attraction, and so I think what we've seen in the US specifically, I'm gonna touch on 4 different cities here in a second, and then we'll touch on Mexico and some of the other areas in a minute, but when you look at an area like Kansas City, international travel intent is up 1,220%.
Mhm.
That's an incredible figure, right? When you think about that. And you compare it to domestic to kind of get a sense, and domestic's still up 75%. So you see this kind of, over indexing to international traffic, but it's really for a city like Kansas City, a huge boom across domestic and international. When you get into other cities like Atlanta, Dallas, and Houston, that story is just a little different. International still looking great, right? We're, plus 250% in Atlanta and Dallas, up 185% in Houston. But when you look at that compared to the domestic numbers, you're seeing, low double digit 14, 16% growth in Dallas and Houston, respectively. You're seeing 5% growth in Atlanta. And I think that there's a couple of elements to that. First is like, obviously what your comparison is. The second is when the games are going to be happening. And so as you think about when traffic starts to book for the group rounds, it's happening now and it's been happening. As we start to think about what happens following group play in the elimination rounds, we see up to 40% of bookings in the 0 to 7 day window. So the message here is like, yes, there's a lot of US cities that are up, international demand is up, but the opportunity is still ahead of us.
Mhm. Yeah, it is very interesting when you kind of compare the Kansas City to the Houston. I'm in Houston, but I'm nervous even in Houston about all the people coming in, and I'm like, "My commute is gonna be so bad," but I cannot even imagine what Kansas City is gonna go through.
It's gonna be something, and I'll tell you, like, what you're getting at is something that we are working on right now, and
Mhm.
I'll give it a little preview. It's gonna be released in the coming weeks, but when we look at these cities like a Kansas City or Houston, you're seeing 2 things happen. People are coming in, but people are also escaping. And so
Okay.
there's just gonna be so much opportunity as you think about whether someone's road tripping away from Houston or, someone is just trying to get away from, like, the craziness of the World Cup. This is a summer travel season that is gonna be one that demands partners are agile and demands they're on top of the trends, which is, like, one of the big reasons that we did partner with Predict HQ because we have this in one platform, and it's rather relatively simple to understand day over day, week over week, how is the market changing in front of me.
Mhm. Yeah, I know you mentioned wanting to talk a little bit about Mexico and Canada. What can you tell us about kind of those markets and how they compare?
Yeah, so it's obviously there's everyone got dialed in on this opportunity quite quickly, right? And so you see a lot of traffic to areas like Monterey. And so an area like Monterey, not what you think of when you think about Mexican leisure travel. but it's a city that's largely benefiting. So we've seen travel intent double. We've seen lodging intent, people searching for hotels and demand up 255% year on year, right? And so you see a lot of these markets that are really over indexing and are up triple digits. In every city, there is opportunity. And I think it's in the host city and then it's in the cities that are adjacent to it,
Mhm,
right? So if you think about like a Toronto, you talk about Toronto, really easy to cross the border into Buffalo. You're going to see opportunity in both of those markets. And that's really what we're seeing.
mhm. Yeah, the spillover markets. I was looking at the spillover markets for Houston, and I was like, in my mind, that's, like, barely Houston, but those, north and kind of, south, east of Houston are seeing a lot of demand too, which is crazy to me.
Yes. I gotta be honest, I didn't even know where Montgomery County was until about 2 weeks ago, and I Googled it. But whether it's Montgomery County or Galveston County to the
Mhm,
south, like, both are growing. And I think it's because people are, 1, looking for value, but 2, if we see 62% of bookings are coming in from 2 to 6 days, right? So they're staying between 2 and 6 days. These are
mhm,
not one-night stays. And so when you think about that, if the game is one night and you only have one ticket, like, yep, there's going to be some fun in that area for you. Is that going to be for the entire stay? Maybe not. And that's when we see people kind of, getting into other parts of the region and, maybe exploring what's, down there in Galveston or what's, in Seattle, it's Tacoma, it's Snohomish County, right? It's what we see rather consistently is if you look at the host city, outside of that, there is a ring of demand that hoteliers are capturing today.
mhm. Yeah, I want to level set for anyone coming to Houston and adding on some days in Galveston. We don't have the prettiest beaches, but it is a very charming Texas coastal town, but not a beach that you're gonna wanna take a lot of pictures of. But
Hey, a beach is a
a
beach.
beach
Fun
is a
is
beach.
fun.
That's exactly how I feel. But yeah, this kind of goes into another part of the report of these like extension opportunities. Are there specific World Cup host cities that lend really nicely for that? Tacking on either a nearby destination or just extra days to explore for these travelers.
It's and, like, I don't wanna give you the cheap answer, but the cheap answer really is that it's most of the cities. So, like, I'll tell you why instead of where, and what our
Okay.
data is telling us is, 1, you have a lot of people coming internationally. We alluded to that just a moment ago, coming a long distance. And so that is gonna be a high value trip, and you are trying to maximize it, right? You're not going down the street to your, like, local, muni soccer game. You're going, potentially crossing an ocean and landing in a city, heading to a soccer game, but you don't want that to be your entire trip. So as we think about, these travelers looking for value, we see it showing up in a couple ways. The obvious one is the length of stay. Length of stay we expect to continue to grow over last year as you see more international traffic. The second piece is if you think about what these cities have to offer, there's a soccer game placed in the city. The city has so much more to offer than just a soccer game, right? And it doesn't matter whether that's Houston or that's Dallas or that's San Francisco, or Vancouver or Toronto. There is so much culture in these cities. Why would you not go explore the city when you're there? Just I love food. Most people enjoy having a nice meal when they're traveling. The culinary opportunities in a lot of these cities for folks is going to be a secondary opportunity for lodging providers because not only do you get to attract people in like the wonderful, restaurants in your own outlet, but you're with your concierge and your ability to direct the traveler, you can create value for them and a great experience that turns into a great review because you can help them understand what is in their city to explore. Trust is a huge factor, right? You're crossing an ocean. I don't know if this restaurant is good or bad. Like Google might say one thing, Yelp says another thing. I'm going to go with what the front desk or the concierge says. And that's why having a really complete program for your travelers is important. And what I mean by that is simply help them have fun in your city, help them explore it, right? Make it easy for them, whether that's transportation to or from the game, pointing out where there's public transportation, where they can catch a shuttle, or it's highlighting off the beaten path, opportunities for them, whether it's a museum or a restaurant. people fatigue of the same thing day over day. So on day 4 of soccer, when they're looking for something new, maybe they explore something a little bit different, like an art museum or a restaurant with a cuisine they haven't tried.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so funny. I keep going back to me being in Houston because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, I'm picturing this now happening in my city," and I'm like, "Oh, I gotta make sure if I go out to eat during the World Cup, I gotta make sure I have a reservation," because I'm just selfishly taking all this information for myself now, but
You seem a little stressed about the World Cup coming to your city,
I
and I want to tell
I
you it's going to be great.
I will say I am excited. I love Houston. I'm born and raised here, so people coming and experiencing Houston is I love that. But then I'm like, "Oh my gosh." It's a little stressful too to see all of that happening, but I'm excited. I promise you. I promise you.
I love it. Now we got to have one nugget here for the folks coming to Houston. What is like your one restaurant recommendation
Oh
that
gosh.
you're like, do not miss?
I could never even, like, pick just one. The beauty of Houston is there's something for everyone. I will say this is not conveniently located to where World Cup activity will happen, but Pondicherry is my favorite, it's Indian, but it's like a bakery too, it's really good. So, that will be just because it's the only thing I can think of, but my list would be, like, a mile long.
I love
Um,
it.
so thanks for putting me on the spot there.
No, no worries. I just want to, turn the tables. But it's like that thing about a list being a mile long. I think that's like the
Mm,
beauty in this, right? Is that in
yeah.
each city, like these lists exist. And certainly there's going to be compression from a lodging
Mhm,
perspective, dining perspective. But, there's just so many cool things as experiences over like things has become more popular,
mhm.
where I think, if you're traveling to one of these cities, you're going to be able to have a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to kind of wrap up, I know we've talked about a lot of the data that just came out, but what's been the most interesting takeaway for you, or kind of and similarly kind of phrased or differently phrased is what are you most interested in seeing how the data kind of comes to fruition? Like, what are you keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I love it because we all have these predictions, right? And I think, revenue managers are the ultimate predictors when they start setting rates 365 days out. How this comes to fruition and comes to being as the World Cup activates this summer is going to be super interesting. I've got my mind on three things. First one, sports travel has become experience, not event led. So I would expect we're going to see length of stay continue to creep north, continue to creep longer, and partners should treat sports travel as a broader leisure opportunity. Full stop. Second piece, higher value travel is becoming the norm. I think that's an economic reality. There's travel for everyone. We see people more willing to put dollars into experiences over things. I think that trend will prove itself true this summer with the World Cup. And I think it will prove itself true as we continue. There is a signal towards like long term shift towards premium, high intent sports travel around these global moments. And I mean, I experienced it last year when I followed the Indiana University football team to the national championship. I continue to see people get these moments where they get to go delight themselves by following their team. The last thing I think we're going to continue to see, and it's relevant to really all hoteliers in your audience, is demand will continue to spread beyond the main venues. The spillover market phenomenon is here to stay, and it's because people want to do more. And then we talked about in the first part of that question, the broader leisure trend. That means leaving the city. That means experiencing other things. And we see 81% of people willing to leave the destination. And I think we'll continue to see that number hover north of 80%. And, lastly, I think the growth is going to start to come more from regional travel, multi city trips, these alternative destinations. I know someone I was speaking with this morning at a conference that they're going to 8 games. They're making it a whole thing. They're going to fly around, with their son to different games. And I think that is just an awesome opportunity to build a core memory, and I think sports events travel is here to stay. I think we'll start talking a bit more about like this being experience led travel as we advance. And the window of opportunity for hoteliers will be before, during, and after the event. And it will encompass, the areas that are around the host city as well. So there's definitely some things I have some eyes on. Experience led travel continuing to be a big deal. High value travel is the norm. Demand's going to continue to spill into other areas, and the lengths of stay are going to extend.
Yeah. Well, you've given us a lot to think about, and obviously, what are we, like, less than a month out,
Less
so
than a month out.
a couple weeks, oh my gosh, and it's happening, so
Get your
we'll
dinner reservations in Houston. Get them lined up.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you for joining me, Brandon. It was great catching up, and like I said, a lot to think about, a lot about this, fan-driven travel that's happening, so thanks for sharing the insight.
Absolutely. We'll be following along your coverage. We appreciate it.
I'm Terence Baker, News Editor, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and I'm the host of The Upgrade, a CoStar News Hotels podcast for the EMEA region. In it, I discuss with special guests the pressures, challenges, joys and exhilaration that comes with managing, owning and developing hotels, hotel firms and ownership companies in our glorious multifaceted industry. Discovering the EMEA region from the scenic northern shores of Norway to a heights of Table Mountain in South Africa, from a warm welcome in Killarney and Galway in Ireland, to the glistening skyscrapers of Dubai, and most likely some chat about birdwatching, distance running, and the English Premiership. Join us wherever you find your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on other platforms.
This episode of the CoStar News Hotels podcast was recorded on May 19th, 2026, and was edited by me, Natalie Harms. Find all hotel industry news at costar.com/hotel news. Subscribe to this and all CoStar News Hotels podcasts wherever you like to listen.